Thank you very much, Madam President. Let me just reorient and align myself to face you directly so that I do not make eye contact with someone on the other side who seems particularly proficient at distracting. And today I saw this gift of his being turned against members of his own side who appear to have had some difficulty concentrating because of the continuous chatter and distracting his own people that he might do even worse to me, you know. Madam President, this is the second time that I have been in this Senate serving as a temporary senator, that I have heard Senator Charles raise questions as to whether allocations are specifically supported in the annual fiscal estimates in the budget. And I don't know, maybe at some point the leader of government business, while we're not debating money bills, can clarify for us whether an allocation must be specific to a particular line item in order for it to be legal, or whether if it falls within the broad allocations made to ministries, that money can be purposed for whatever becomes the legitimate responsibility of that ministry or government department. In other words, you have a budget, let us say, for the year of $16 million for school repairs and maintenance, etc., etc. And at some point, something comes up that is not specifically mentioned. Is it that within the ministry they cannot allocate it or purpose it for that because it is not specifically mentioned? If not, a budget would have to be particularly prophetic. It would have to be particularly clairvoyant to foresee every single thing that would arise. If a hurricane or a tropical storm comes, that we only see it in the context of a roof being blown off, but we don't see it in the context of maybe the school feeding program is affected because the electricity supply was affected, and so your refrigeration facilities, is affected. That we don't see it in the context that, okay, your wall was not knocked down, but something pertaining to your after-school holding of students in a place where they can stay. School finishes at 2:30. Parents don't get off work until 4:30. So between that time, do you have a facility where you can keep the students there safely until their parents? I'm not saying this is it. There seems to be a difficulty in understanding social infrastructure. That when you have things like social infrastructure, they may involve home caregivers program, something else that does not have to do with the strict blocks and walls and concrete and steel, but have to do with the support systems of transportation, and as Senator Charles herself mentioned, the school feeding program. It is a social infrastructure attached to the education system. So I was a little, miffed as to what seems to be missed, and I had to ask myself, is it that I do not understand those things myself? So when people raise them, they seem a little weird to me, but to me it appeared to be something that was a no-brainer, but I ain't so bright, I gotta admit that to you. Senator Fede seems to be, I might say, stricken. Afflicted may be too strong a word, but it seems to be stricken with the same perception of the leader of the opposition in the lower house and his political leader of the United Workers' Party, with the notion that if ever you have to claim success for something to be considered to be fiscally successful, that the manner in which you represent that success is by pointing not to the results that you have obtained, but to the amount of money that you have spent. And so over the years we've become accustomed, even at a time when he was not yet an elected member, he was a senator. Significantly, he began his foray in the parliament as a senator, Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation at the time, that his boast was always the amount of millions that he and his ministry spent, whether to subsidize planes, American Airlines, to fly into St. Lucia empty or half empty, whatever it is. This was always the boast, that we spent $10 million. And so this is not the first time I have been here and I am hearing the criticism of this present government for not spending enough money. We spent 10 million, y'all are only spending 2 million, so y'all are a failure, y'all are not doing. Is that the metric of success?
Madam President, I must stand on a point of order. I'm very sorry to interrupt the honourable member's presentation.
What is your point of order, Senator Fede?
The member is grossly misleading the House as it relates to the results component. To suggest that we have a focus and emphasis on money only, that's not true. Because in those years that you're talking about, we see a fundamental increase in the airlift, and we saw tourism arrivals. Check the figures, and the figures produce the results.
Fede.
So that's a wrong premise.
Senator Fede.
Yes, Madam President.
You indicated that the member is misleading the House based on his understanding of what you uttered. Your responsibility is to bring out the truth if he misrepresented your utterances.
And that's what I'm doing.
No, you went off on a tangent about figures.
No tangent. But simply, I'm giving him the results.
Simply.
And you need figures to quantify results.
Senator Fede, you simply indicate to the Senate what you said that he represented succinctly. That's simply.
Madam President,
thank you.
What I am saying to the Senate is that the member said very clearly and confidently that I am afflicted by the same disease or whatever you want to call it, or the same issue that the leader of the opposition in the lower house is afflicted by. And that is, we only talk about spending of monies, okay? And we don't look at the results. And I'm saying to him that he's wrong about the corresponding results, because whether in tourism, whether about the building of the school plants, we have seen corresponding results at every time. And so that statement is an absolute untruth.
Madam President, it appears that my attempt to reorient my alignment to look at you in order to avoid distraction has been an exercise in futility. The honorable member is determined to distract members of this side when we are speaking, and it is not the first time I have observed that he rises on what he calls a point of order, but he cannot point to any violation of the orders, aka the standing orders. He cannot point to anyone infraction, and I'm hoping as we grow and as we move along, even though I'm not a regular here, that Senator Fede will come to the point of understanding a point of disagreement. What is a disagreement that he has with an opinion expressed by someone as opposed to a point of order? You cannot control people's opinions and the manner in which they express themselves in this highest forum of debate and discussion when an allegation is continuously being made, an untrue one, that freedom of expression is under attack in this country. If we are to come and make that allegation, we must extol the virtue of such freedom of expression in this august and highest forum as an example and a display to the country. I say that as an aside, and I will move on. I will repeat the point that the gross expenditure of money is no true reflection of the success of your fiscal policy. That is the point that I am making. You may have spent 10 million and it may have been a justified 10 million. But because you have spent that 10 million, you have laid the groundwork, you have put in the concrete and steel, it means your successor may not need to go down that road. Too often we believe that every government must prove its value and its success by building roads, by building community centers, when what we need is to say, okay, the roads have already been built, the community centers have already been built, the hard infrastructure is already there. What we need now is to focus on the maintenance, on the provisioning, on the equipping, on the putting in of the computers, on the putting in of ancillary facilities. We need to stop making that point that I spent 50 million, therefore I have done more than you have done. That is the point that I am making. Too much of this. And you know, sometimes when we look at how the money is spent, a lot of it is dubious. It's not everybody who will come in and he'll do a fresh start. Why do a fresh start when you have already put down the things in place? But we see everything in the context of doing a fresh start and starting things all over again. The endless reinventing of the wheel just to claim a legacy that I spend this and I splurge this and so on. I'm saying that is flawed reasoning, and it is one that we must seriously look at and push back against it by way of rebuttal, as I think I am doing. I will not be long, Madam President, and I'm sure before I finish, the leader of opposition business will rise again to say that I'm misleading or I'm misquoting him. Senator Fede seems to have confused the matter of the university graduates and the policy of this government to say we want to achieve the feat of having one university graduate per household. He mentions that we have about 13,000 whatever number, and please don't, come up on point of order, because 13,000 something households in St. Lucia. So that means we should be giving out 13,000, if it's 13,500, he said 13,500 scholarships. Again, it is the fallacy and the flaw in the reasoning. The fact that we have 13,500 households does not mean that we need to achieve the one graduate per household figure, that we need to achieve one, because there would be several of those households that already have university graduates. Sometimes they have more than one. So are you now going to go and say that you need to give out the amount of scholarships to achieve one graduate per household? What you are saying is that those households that do not yet have a university graduate, you want them to have at least one. It does not mean that you can put on hold the other households that already have one or more university graduate. That would be discriminatory. If someone qualifies for a scholarship, if someone has a household, has the qualifications and the need and the promise to get more university graduates for household, you're not going to put them on hold. There will be those who already have their first degree. There is a chance for them to get their masters. There is a chance for them to get their higher degrees. What you are saying is that those households that do not yet have a university graduate, you want them to have one, and you're not limiting them to one. You say you want them to have at least one. But if there are people who come up who are eligible for scholarships and to go to do degrees, 5 in a household for the first time, and you can afford to give it, you give it to them. Scholarships are not the only way to facilitate people in getting university degrees. There are economic cost support and other things that you can give them and so on to encourage them. The other fallacy that I found is that somehow the government has failed because it is not the one that is giving out the total number of scholarships needed. So you have only given away 200 scholarships, the same number that was there. What if now we don't need the government to be footing the bill for more scholarships because we have more support from the government of Turkey, we have more from the government of Morocco, we have from Venezuela, we have from Cuba, we have from the UK on the Chevening, and so many other, we have so many other scholarships. So it is possible now that the government does not need to shell out so much for scholarships because it has expanded its range of international cooperation, diplomatic engagements from Taiwan, and so many others that we can do without having to shell out. Who will turn down the opportunity to save? Who will turn down the opportunity to economize? Who will turn down the opportunity, to spare the treasury of St. Lucia some more burden at a time when we have so many things, fiscally and otherwise, militating against us? Now, I heard Senator Charles straining, it seems, at a bridge way too far to suggest that in the repairs and in the attention being given to schools, she didn't use the word. Please don't challenge me. She didn't say discrimination or victimization. She didn't say that. But when she spoke about out of 7 schools, only one of them falls in an opposition represented constituency. I mean, I didn't know whether to laugh. I didn't know whether to giggle. I didn't know whether to raise my eyebrow. I didn't know what to do on this one. There are 17 constituencies. Only 2 of them are represented by opposition members of parliament. The ratio will invariably mean that when you count 1 out of 7, let us multiply that ratio by 2. If you multiply 1 out of 7 and say you take 2 opposition, what does that mean? 14 government-held ones, you still have 3 others that will get attention without any opposition there to match them. Does that mean you're being discriminatory? The numbers are the numbers, you know. The numbers are the numbers. You know, the numbers are the numbers. We have a problem with how the elections turned out. And had we done it, you know, the people spoke. And they spoke. When they spoke 11-6, where was that concern when the kind of discrimination and marginalization and naked victimization under something like the constituency development program? Not a dime given to 6 people who the people in their wisdom spoke and decided that they wanted in the House of Assembly. You know, this was discrimination. The government changed. The new government, this government has done absolutely nothing so petty and despicable and victimizing. They have made sure that every member of the parliament gets their allocation, including the opposition representatives. And nobody fault, you know, the people spoke that is only 2 of them. And nobody fault that 1 out of 7, 2 out of 14 still leaves a surplus of 3 on the government side. I will not even waste time commenting, Madam President, on this continuous effort to paint St. Lucia as if it is in the worst possible condition anyone of. Because I had the contradictions. At the same time you come in and talk about poverty in St. Lucia and things are so bad and so on. It's the same time I'm hearing that people, I'm sorry I have to refer to something, but we're in the same sitting, of course. The same thing I'm hearing about how people, you know, living on food stamps in that country and people demonstrating because of inflation and this and that and the other. But I will stop here, Madam President, since I recognize that this is a skill which I must acknowledge that the opposition has. That on any motion that we have, no matter what the specifics of it, to go all over and to bring in everything. So we're talking about something pertaining to schools and education and social infrastructure associated with education. We somehow end up with the farmers. We somehow end up with that. We somehow end up with there being no plantain. I don't know where they get in the plantain at some restaurants right here in town, not far, that I go and they give me my ripe plantain because I tell them I don't like the green plantain, it's too hard. They give me banana, I tell them I ate enough banana already. Give me some more sweet potato and dash in. You know, I don't know where they're getting it. All over the place. I don't know if that is the story that the marketing board will tell us, that we are being told there is none whatsoever in the country. But I recognize again, I have to pay respect to those who have the skill to take every issue and every subject, no matter how precisely and explicitly stated on the order paper, to use it to bring in some preconceived political talking points and to repeat them over. And I'm surprised that they haven't heard about 2.5%, you know. I'm really, really surprised that I haven't heard about the 2.5%, how it's killing the country and the country is dead because of it. But thankfully for that, I will leave it at that and to say that I stand in support of this resolution. Madam President, thank you very much.